Hello, my name is Renee Wells. I'm the Public Engagement Project Manager for Constructor University, and this is CU Talks, where we talk about science because science matters. And today we have Professor Dr. Andrea Koschinsky, and she's a geochemist, correct?
That's correct.
And just maybe you could just start with the idea of helping us understand, what is a geochemist?
A geochemist is basically a chemist, and I must say I studied chemistry, and it took me quite a few years to get into geosciences, which was after my chemistry diploma during my PhD thesis. A geochemist is basically applying the principles and the methods and the theory of chemistry to the earth.
I understand. And how did you get into that, and what sparked that interest for you?
Yeah, so as I said, I studied chemistry, and I liked that subject a lot, but it was clear for me right from the beginning that I didn't want to work in the chemical industry. I was much more interested in the environment and in natural processes. And in my diploma thesis, I just by accident got into contact with a marine ferromanganese nodule from the seafloor. And I was supposed to analyze it. And I was wondering what it was, and so I got in touch with the marine science department in that university. And so I learned about the subject, and I got a student job there, and I was able to observe how the group was preparing for a marine research cruise in the Pacific. To study ferromanganese encrustations on the seafloor. And it sounded so exciting to me. And at some point I was clear, I have to join that. I have to try everything to get into that. Yes, and I was successful. And since then, since that cruise, it was clear to me that this was my true passion.
And so just this idea of cruises and being on boats is part of the work that you do in general, but which we're going to dig into in a moment. But before that, right now we have in Brazil, we have this World Climate Conference happening, and I'm just wondering, Global Climate Conference, sorry. What do you think about that situation there, and whether that's what's going to come of that, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we have learned from the past that these climate conferences usually in the end don't come up with the results that they are actually meant to come up with and that everybody hopes for. I mean, there was a lot of enthusiasm in the 10 years ago in the climate conference in Paris, where it really looked like now the global communities would get together and really combat climate change. And we have seen that, well, not so much has happened since then. So in Brazil, I think there is another chance because it's now finally in a democratic country where also other parties are able to raise their voices, to have some influence. And I think that there are also some great incentives now at the moment, for example, with this tropical forest forever fund or facility that President Lula has suggested. And I think this is the way forward that we have to go. There has to be an incentive and a positive feeling for changing or for protecting the environment, and with this, protecting the climate.
If it comes from Brazil itself, then it's going to be helpful.
It comes from Brazil itself.
Right.
I mean, Brazil has, of course, the largest rainforest in the world. This is an amazing ecosystem. But it has suffered a lot in the past decades due to anthropogenic impact, not only because of climate change. Deforestation is a big issue, mining, building the dams, and it is one of our largest allies in keeping the climate stable. So, of course, if we destroy it, then, of course, we also damage the climate. And, I mean, Brazil is very aware of it. At the same time, their population is growing. There is a need for economic growth, for development. And that also puts a lot of pressure on their resources. And so I think they are trying to find a good way to balance the two things out.
And how does your work, your research into the chemistry of the ocean, basically, and impact or contribute to that discussion about climate change?
Yeah. I mean, part of my marine research has been carried out in the Amazon estuary. My first cruise there was in 2018. So mostly I've been doing more open ocean and deep sea research. But for my whole life, I have been fascinated by tropical rainforests. And I've been traveling in many of them.
Was that the first time you ever went to rainforest in 2018?
Sorry?
Was that the first time you ever went to rainforest in 2018?
I have been in rainforests many times before.
I've never been on one.
Yeah, so and during private travels basically, and So I always thought if I would be able to connect my professional work in marine sciences with my enthusiasm for the rainforest, this would be wonderful. And so I had an exchange project with Brazil for many years with Brazilian scientists. And as part of this exchange project, I really now started to go into the Amazon and do sampling there, get up to Manaus, to be out on the river Rio Negro and all of that. And at some point I thought, well, there is a natural connection between the forest and the ocean, and that's the estuary.
For those of us who haven't been there, and I've not been there, and for those of us who may think, when you hear Amazon, we think of packages. I told my daughter this morning I'm going to interview scientists today about Amazon. She said, "Oh, really? Does she make packages for Christmas?" And I said, "No." And so I wonder how much Jeff Bezos has damaged the knowledge of children around the world.
Yes.
But anyway, can you give us a sense of the scale and size of it? Like if instead of we're in Bremen, we're on the Weser. If the Weser was the Amazon, I mean, how far would it stretch into Europe? I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, if you have been on the Amazon and in that area, and then you come back here and you see the Weser and the Elbe, they look so ridiculously small. So it's really unbelievable. So in the estuarine region, when you are out there on a boat, it doesn't feel like you are on a river. You think you are on an ocean.
Oh, wow.
And it even has waves like on the ocean. And in Manaus, the river usually in the rainy season is 10 kilometers wide and 100 meters deep. It's unbelievably large. So it's by far the largest river in the world, and it discharges about 20% of the global freshwater supply to the oceans. It's much larger than the next 5 or 7 big rivers together, and that's why it's also so extremely important.
And it sustains a lot of people, I guess, and a lot of life, not just people, but also ecosystems, right?
Well, the biosphere, the whole ecosystem is so biodiverse. This is really absolutely amazing. So the Amazon is not only a huge carbon storage and water storage reservoir, but it also hosts among the highest biodiversity in the world. And I mean, of course, also with this, it provides enormous ecosystem services for humans. I mean, the population density is not that high in that region simply because of this extremely large rainforest. So when you fly there, for example, from Rio or Sao Paulo, you're flying for hours over green forest.
Wow.
But you also see again and again patches where you see the forest has been destroyed and there are roads being built. So you can see both the enormous magnitude of the forest, but you can also see what's happening to it, yes.
So you did this GEOTRACES expedition, yeah?
Yes.
And aboard the Meteor, which is the name of a boat.
Yes.
And I'm just, before I go into what happened there, what is GEOTRACES about?
GEOTRACES is a large international program that is meant, in principle, for geochemically mapping the oceans and understanding the whole cycling of the metals in the ocean. What are their sources? What are their sinks? How do we anthropogenically impact them? It also looks at the interfaces to land, for example. And so the estuaries and coastal areas are part of those studies to see how the land and what runs off from the land in terms of coastal runoff, or especially of big rivers, discharges into the ocean, because that plays a very important role in the whole biogeochemical cycling of the ocean. It provides nutrients and so on and so on. It provides organic matter, and all of that has an influence on what happens in the ocean also in terms of life.
How do you define the scope of such a research project? Because, I mean, you have a huge river with obviously millions of things going on.
Yeah, of course. One has to work a bit focused, because otherwise you only get bits and pieces.
Right, sure.
Yeah, so our focus is to look at trace metals and how they are influenced by all the organic molecules that come out of the river, because the river, the Amazon drains the Amazon rainforest, as the name says. And so there's a lot of organic matter in there, and that has a big impact on whether these metals go all into the big fan and in the sediment at the bottom, or whether they can be transported into the waters. And when they remain in the water, then they can also be taken up by organisms. They can act as micronutrients, they can feed life, and influence the whole trophic food chain, basically.
Okay, so I'm just going to think now about the actual practical side of how you do the research. You're on this boat. First of all, the Meteor.
Yeah.
Why is it called a Meteor? Do you have any idea?
Well, there has been
Meteor, I think outer space.
There has been a German tradition that all the German research vessels have names of some space bodies. Like we have research vessel Sonne, we have research vessel Meteor and Polarstern. So this is just a German tradition. And the new Meteor is now being built, and it's again called Meteor number 4 then. And that one, old one, which will retire basically summer next year, and with which we have been in the Amazon estuary now twice, is the Amazon 3, the Meteor 3.
Okay. Can you give us an idea for the listeners out there what the boat looks like?
Yeah, so it's a 100-meter long boat with several levels where about 30 scientists and 35 ship crew live together for up to 6 weeks, depending on how long the cruise goes. But that's about the time how long this ship can stay out without going into port. And it has labs inside where we can bring our equipment and set it up there and analyze the samples directly. And it has a lot of like cranes and a working deck and containers, everything where the equipment is. And then from there, we basically get the equipment out with cranes, take water samples, take samples from the bottom and so on, bring them back on board. And then the scientists come, pack them for home analysis or do first analysis on board. And
so who does the boat belong to? I mean, is it a company that does this, or you book time on the boat?
No, it's not a private company. So it is owned basically by the state and also funded by the state.
And you basically book time on it, is that?
Exactly. So we have to submit a proposal, which has to be scientifically sound so that it can be approved. And we can also apply for the funding for the cruise, so including the shipping of the containers with our material, our travels, our consumables, and so on. And when this is approved, then we get into the ship time planning. So this is not an easy thing because the ship is around the world for the whole year. It never goes back to a German port or something like that. So if you want to go to a specific area, you basically have to wait until the ship is there.
Passing through Zone X and
so usually there is the control station that organizes the ships in a specific order, and then you get your slot, and you know it about like a year in advance typically, and then you can start planning. And it's a complex story with all the logistics and everything.
I can only imagine. In terms of the team that you work with, what are the roles and I mean, how many students and postdocs and?
Yes, so there is one chief scientist. So for both of the Amazon cruises, I have been the chief scientist who was responsible for everything, who also came up with a basic scientific idea, and I gathered partners in the project. So one partner dealing with the organic part, others dealing more with the sediments and so on, so that we have that we can have a holistic approach on the research question. And of course, in this case, also we have our Brazilian partners, because without the local support and the involvement of Brazilian scientists, it's not possible to work in the Amazon national waters, because it's in their waters and you need to apply for permission via the Office of Foreign Affairs.
You need some challenges in 2024 with the drought, right, somehow?
Yes. So when we submitted the proposal long time ago, of course, we wouldn't know that the seasonal changes in the Amazon would become so extreme. So there's always a dry season and a wet season, and the water level is significantly different. The height of the water level is 15 meters difference between high and low season.
Wow.
It's completely different world. In the rainy season, in the wet season, you can go with boats into the forest because everything is flooded. And in the dry season, you have little islands sticking out everywhere and beaches along the river.
So obviously your navigation plan changes.
Yes. So, and of course, then also that impacts how much water goes from the Amazon River into the coastal area. And so we were aware in the dry season where we wanted to go in 2024, there would be less water. But because of this very extreme drought in the year before, the situation was completely different than we expected.
What challenges did you face on practical level?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is the Amazon shelf is very shallow. This is what you don't see when you look from above, but very often it's only 10 to 20 meters deep for 200 kilometers.
Pushing all this dirt out constantly.
Exactly. It's all the material that is pushed out via the river and that deposits there. And you have a lot of sandbanks that are very difficult to navigate because they also move around. And so there are large areas that you can only go properly when the water level is high enough. But now that the water level was so low, many of the original sampling points that we had planned to go were not accessible to the ship. And so we had to negotiate with the Brazilian Navy, who basically gives the permission for the work, to adapt our sampling scheme. So unfortunately, this time we experienced that they were completely inflexible and not willing to really support us. And so we were kind of bound to our original plans many years ago, which was very different than in 2018, where we had the full flexibility. And we didn't really expect that, so we were quite surprised. And
so in 2018 is more flexible, and in 2024 there was basically
yes, and I mean, considering the fact that the Brazilians get all the data we produce on board, so what would they have lost if they would have let us down our job?
Any idea why this was the case, or
no? It
politics of the day, or whatever.
It may have to do with the fact that there is oil drilling and oil exploration going in the Amazon fan, and that's mostly Petrobras, big company, oil company. And the suspicion was that they don't want to risk that we find anything maybe that is worth protecting, like the big Amazon reef that was discovered like about 10 years ago, which is a really quite unique system, 100 kilometers long in the muddy area where you would never expect a reef. It's protected and they can't drill,
right?
Yes, so exactly. And so maybe it had to do with this, but even the Brazilians couldn't explain that.
So let's go to daily life on the boat.
Yes.
Yeah? So you get up in the morning, and how does the day start? Just walk us through a typical day. Is there a coffee, tea meeting, or I don't know, how does it go?
Maybe I should say right in the beginning that it's not you get up in the morning and you start work. This is not the case for everyone, because there's work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 265 days per year, basically.
Right.
And we were there over Christmas, and so, there was no Christmas break. So the ship is so expensive, and we need to exploit its full possibilities. So there are shifts all around the day and during the night.
So that's
for those who are lucky enough and can get up in the morning, there is breakfast. So there are 2 excellent cooks that always serve excellent food. So one has to take care that after 6 weeks one hasn't put on too much weight. And then...
so you work in shifts, basically?
It depends a little bit. Sometimes people work when they do very specific work. They do that in packages, and that can sometimes also mean they work for 24 hours without a major break. Others do shift, like, for example, if they deploy the equipment, and they do it for like 10 hours. And
good thing you're in international waters where there's no German labor law.
Well, no, but there's... No, the ship itself is German property. And so the German laws apply on the ship.
Yeah, but a scientist yourself.
No, I mean, of course, we have to obey the certain rules and take care of... that's also the duty of me as a chief scientist, to take care that safety is guaranteed for everyone.
Right.
And well-being. And there are meetings, like planning meetings, where we discuss the next stations, especially also when there are any unforeseen changes or so. Then I'm collecting the wish lists, basically, of the different scientists, what samples they need, and so on. And we are organizing all of that. Then I have every morning a meeting with the ship's crew, with the captain and other people responsible for certain departments. And then we are discussing the day, and then they tell me from the technical viewpoint and from the navigation viewpoint what we have to consider, and so on and so on. So there must be also a good exchange with all the parties on board.
I can imagine there's a lot of effort to basically promote harmony and collaboration. Yeah.
Yes, and it's it's also not an easy thing to be with the same group of people on a very limited space for several weeks under quite a lot of pressure. And so but usually it works very well. And what the nice thing about also that is that there is a very special mood and community feeling developing, because we are like a big family. We depend on each other.
Right.
And so it is usually a very good experience, but it sometimes brings you to the limits.
I can imagine.
There's often not much sleep, and people are exhausted, but at the end of the cruise, usually, if most of the things went well, everybody is really happy.
How do you actually get the samples? I mean, what does that look like? Is it a crane, and do you drop some device?
So in the Amazon system, we mostly looked for water samples. So what we had basically were so-called rosette water sampler. So that is a roundish piece of equipment with sensors in the middle and water bottles attached around that you can electronically trigger when you lower them through the water column, so that you can take samples at different depths.
Okay.
And you can follow with your sensors when you come to the conditions where you want to have the samples. And you bring that back on board, the crane brings it in, and then from there, the samples go into the labs. For the sediment, it's a kind of a corer. So that's a piece of equipment that has
What? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
a corer, a sediment corer. So it basically like
Corer.
a corer. Yeah, it's not like a drill, but there are liners, plastic liners, basically pushed into the bottom, into the soft sediment, and then basically closed at the bottom, and then they are pulled up again, so that it's like you take a piece of a soil column.
Like a straw.
Yes, exactly. So you push it into the ground and then you pull it out again and you try to keep it as intact as possible. You bring it on board and then you can, for example,
see the layers
look at the different layers and see how over time, for example, the deposition of material has changed.
Did you notice any difference between the samples from 2018 versus 2020?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That's the...
Yes. I mean, in 2018, we were in a normal rainy season. So there was quite a lot of outflow of fresh water into the Atlantic. And there was so basically we look at the mixing of two end members. One of the end members is a pure river and the other end member is a pure seawater. And what happens is that they incrementally mix from the estuary into the open ocean. And with this, a couple of chemical reactions are triggered. They change the composition and that determine of how much actually ends up in the ocean. And it was a relatively smooth gradient, this mixing. This time we had a clear front. So there was seawater up to the river mouth, basically. And then came the fresh water front because there was so little. I mean, apparently it had just rained so that there was fresh water coming, but it was really like a clear line between the two. And so it was not like this, but it was like a cut.
So not a slope, but more like a cliff.
And we saw that the input of metals, which also act as important nutrients for the life, was much, much more limited. And we extended our work to the mangrove belt to the south of the Amazon River, because this is one of the largest mangrove stretches in the world. And we also tried to look at the role of the mangroves there. And we found that there's so little fresh water coming out of the mangroves that they were more salty than the seawater. Unbelievable.
Wow. I can't believe that's good for the mangroves.
Yeah, so, well, we saw a lot of changes, some of them already visually or with the sensors already, but we are now more and more seeing the differences in the lab, the more data we produce.
And in terms of looking forward, what's the next project for you? What's the next step?
Yeah, I mean, one of the next steps is there is already another cruise that will be happening in the Amazon plume. So basically the river plume, because that doesn't go straight into the Atlantic, but it typically moves northwest up to the Caribbean.
Okay.
And so the plan is, together with another research institution that looks more at the plankton dynamics and so on. We want to follow that plume from the river estuary up to basically towards the Caribbean and see how this changes and how long or how far it actually influences the processes in the coastal regions.
Will you be chief scientist again, getting back on a boat, perhaps?
Yes, I think so. So that's a plan.
And now you're in the process of preparing proposal and project plans?
Yeah, the proposal has already been submitted and approved. Now we are just waiting for the ship time, basically. So we are looking for getting a slot. But that will then be on the new Meteor.
Meteor 4.
Meteor 4, and it's being built here in Bremen North.
I thought I saw it, yeah.
You saw it probably, yeah. It's lying at the Fassmann shipyard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the plan is it's going to be ready next summer.
That sounds exciting. We're talking about your life as a researcher and the ships and the exciting stuff that you dreamt about when you were a younger person, starting out and you were excited. Has it been like a dream come true for you?
Yes, I would say so. I mean, I could basically achieve everything also in my professional life that I really liked. I could go out. I could go to the places that are really important to me, both personally and also with respect to the science behind. And I have the freedom to decide what I can research. So it was my decision to work in the Amazon region. And it has really been so exciting and eye-opening. And at the same time, I also enjoy teaching because...
That's my next question, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Because, I mean, what does the science help if you don't like transfer the knowledge to the people and prepare them for being global leaders in the future to make our world a better place? especially considering climate change, resource scarcity, and all of that. And so, I'm having been teaching here at Constructor University for more than 20 years now. Now in a program called Earth Sciences and Sustainable Management of Environmental Resources.
That's a long title.
That's a long title, but it exactly reflects what this is all about.
Can you say that one more time?
Yes, Earth Sciences and Sustainable Management of Environmental Resources.
Wow, so, it makes sense. It's very clear.
Yes, and Earth Sciences, first of all, is to teach students that our Earth is a system where everything is connected and humans are a part of it. And whatever we do has an influence on the rest because there are all these global or these feedback cycles that trigger another reaction. And so first of all, the understanding to see the system as in a holistic view. And then the focus is, of course, on sustainable approaches of using our resources. And these resources include minerals, so mining, deep sea mining are big topics. It's water, it's biological resources, it's fresh water, and so energy.
You're able to use your real world research projects as case studies for
Exactly. And I always also try to involve students into our research projects. So usually I can take one student of our bachelor student group on a research cruise and enable the student to participate and also do the bachelor thesis on that afterwards. And that was also the case in the Amazon cruise.
Wow.
And the student had just finished her thesis in spring or in summer this year and greatly contributed to the overall outcome. And there will be a publication coming out of that. And that is for bachelor students also a unique opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds like a very busy life.
Yes.
I mean, how do you balance this going out on these research adventures and then for weeks at a time and then teaching load and then publishing and getting proposals done?
Yeah. I mean, it's a challenge. It admittedly also sometimes brings me to the limits. So sometimes I have to also basically decide not to follow a certain opportunity of doing another research project.
Right.
Because, I mean, with each research project I acquire in terms of funding and all of that, there come also a lot of obligations. I need to make sure that the work is running, that there may be issues in the lab and all of that, and I have to do the project management.
Right.
So I have to take care of reports, look that the budgeting is right together with our grants management and all of that. So there's a lot of work after the approval of the project and the publications and supervision of PhD students. And so, I mean, it's a lot of fun, but it's also, admittedly, it's a lot of work.
I think a lot of people don't realize the role of management skills that a scientist must have.
Exactly. I'm not working in the lab anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I have
people
time.
think scientists think in the lab.
No. I mean, I would love to do, and sometimes on the ship I have the possibility, because on the ship it's still a bit of a different world, you know. But usually, I mean, sometimes I wonder why I didn't study economics and management because, these are the tools that I nowadays need a lot.
I've heard other scientists and researchers say the same thing.
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Just one last big question. Looking forward to the future, imagining 20, 30, 50 years from now, what do you hope the impact of your work will be?
Yeah, first of all, I hope that I could support as many students as possible in their career, also to adopt my enthusiasm for the work and also to understand that there is urgent need to act, to save our resources, to combat climate change and all of that, and that they get into positions that are also influential enough to make a difference. And I hope that my papers, my publications will still be quoted in 20, 30 years and maybe have laid the basis for some work that builds on it. And I hope, of course, that it will have a longer lasting effect. And so...
I'm sure it will. And I hope you tell your students that they should study finance and management as well.
Yes, that's part. This is actually part of our study program. In contrast to traditional geosciences program, they do economics courses, and as the program name already indicates, it's about sustainable management. So they don't get into detail in any of the specific topics, but they learn which tools they can use to put everything together.
And that's basically the idea of being constructors. And we have our tools, and we construct the future and construct knowledge. And I just want to say thank you very much, Andrea Koschinsky, for being here today. I really enjoyed learning. I learned a lot. I appreciate it greatly. And thank you for the work you do. I think it's very important because science matters. Thank you very much, Andrea.
Thank you.